day 24 of our Advent calendar. Merry Christmas Eve to all those who celebrate. Let's see what story we have today. I was wrongfully charged over my mom passing away. Okay, so not quite the Christmas spirit, but that's okay. You know, we'll get through this together. There is a note here that this story is apparently well known for some people because it made news articles. I have not heard of it. Maybe you have. Either way, the story came July 10th, 2023, and it goes up until current, very recent times. That means it was like pretty serious, which is sad. It's sad. I know this is entertainment, but the title's very sad. All right, so on July 10th, there was a post on Reddit titled, "It's Time." Yesterday morning, I got the call that my mom had suddenly fallen unresponsive and that I likely had less than a day to get back to Georgia to see her before she was gone. The call coincided with a 1 in 1,000 year weather event that grounded all flights, trains, or hope of a rental car out of the Northeast for at least 24 hours. I bought 3 plane tickets of $1,000+ each, only to have them canceled one after another. Then, late last night, we found a flight leaving Washington, D.C. today at 5 p.m. Now we are on the Amtrak from New York City to D.C. I feel exhausted, defeated, trying to suppress the hope of arriving in time to hold my mom in my arms once more before she is gone forever. I half wrote a eulogy at 4 a.m. and now my brain can do nothing but cycle through memories and strip me bare of every emotion but agony. In one of my earliest memories, I'm sitting on the floor of my parents' powder room watching my mom get ready for bed. The house was quiet save for the exhaling walls as they settled in the night. Just outside the powder room entrance, the sheer curtains billowed in the breeze coming through the screen door that opened onto the bedroom balcony. Cricket frogs called from across the pond and the Canada geese circled above, their honks increasingly urgent until interrupted by the sound of their bodies shearing the winter's surface. Then all silent until the lonesome train announced itself in the distance. Staring up from my nest of toys on the carpet, my mom appeared like a mythic goddess, tendrils of her waist-length blonde hair falling to the floor like fairy floss. Every now and then she would stop and smile down at me beautifully. "What are you doing, baby brat?" Not long after, she would tuck me into the king-size cannonball poster bed before slipping in beside me. Wordlessly, just as I began to drift off, she slid her hand over to catch mine. 2 squeezes is a question. Love me? 2 squeezes of my own, it's an answer, I do. She squeezes twice more. How much? We squeezed our hands tight in unison. We never had to wait for an answer. I got a feeling this is gonna make me cry. Obviously, this is a very triggering time of year for me. If you're new here, my partner lost his mom 2 years ago on December 22nd, so the holidays are very heavy for us. Yes, I'll just say that. That way I don't cry. So I feel for her. I mean, I feel for anyone who has lost anyone in their life, but anyone who's lost a mom, it just is extra triggering. We have an update that was written July 18th, 8 days later. My mom passed in my arms on July 12th at 6:56 a.m. 6 hours before she drew her last breath, she surfaced and saw me. She'd essentially been non-responsive aside from furrowing her brows, groaning, and staring blankly since she was found non-responsive and doubled over in her chair on Sunday. But soon after midnight, before she passed, she saw me and responded for the first time since my arrival on Monday night. I was kneeling beside her, face to face, as she laid on her side on the bed. I was telling her how much I loved her and would miss her, and for the first time, I sobbed openly in front of her. I had previously been reassuring and maybe a little professional chaplain-like, but I could no longer restrain my emotion. I told her I was crying so hard because I love her so much. Oh, I'm gonna cry. For sure I'm gonna cry. Ugh. God, this is not very holly and jolly, let me tell ya. And for the first time, her eyes focused on me and scanned my face as she tried to speak, raising her brows and flexing the corners of her mouth to communicate. I told her that I heard her and I loved her too, that I will always be with her and she with me, that I'll miss her terribly, but that I would see her again. That one day I'd be right where she was, but that I would be happy because I knew I'd know that she was waiting for me. I couldn't stop crying, but I played her some of our favorite songs and she rested her eyes again as I kissed her face. A few hours later, she began to struggle to breathe, her jaw working hard as her hands and feet grew cold. I helped her and I told her how much I loved her and how I was with her and how everything would be okay until the spaces between breaths grew longer and harder until they stopped. You have a beautiful way of writing, I gotta say. Now, here's where the real update comes. It came 2 years later in recent times, November 21st, 2025. And the title is, I was wrongly charged with murder after my mom passed away in hospice with Alzheimer's and cancer. Now I am trying to prevent the same thing from happening to other caregivers. Bear with me because this is going to be a wild and horrifying ride, but easily Googled if you search Rachel Waters case. But I'll try to make things as easy as possible and answer any questions I can. That said, many of you in this community may recall me as I was a frequent poster throughout my mom's brutal decline from Alzheimer's and cancer, and another user linked my story here after my arrest back in March. Now that I'm free, I want everyone who is a loved one with dementia, especially if they plan to ever go on home hospice as I did, to know what happened. In July of 2023, I was called by my mom's home hospice provider. She had end-stage multiple myeloma and Alzheimer's. I am probably saying that wrong. And I was told I needed to get down to Georgia ASAP from where I live in New York City. She had been found doubled over, non-responsive, with an oxygen saturation in the 70s and blackening fingers and toes. She had been declared actively dying by hospice staff, and I was told on the phone that she had hours to days left to live. My husband and I got there as quickly as we could, grabbed our comfort kit from the house. My mom had only been in assisted living and memory care for 3 months at that point, but had been on hospice for several months before, which was when the comfort kit was prescribed to us. And we set up a bed in her room. After 3 days with no responsiveness to anything but a pained face as she was turned, she had 2 large bed sores and no food or fluids, along with no urination or defecation. My mom began to experience severe breathing difficulties. Despite repeated requests, the hospice company had not prescribed a comfort kit or morphine to the assisted living facility itself, which led us to rely on my mom's comfort care kit and hospice instructions via phone. I didn't know any of this was a thing. I know of home hospice, but I had no idea the details of that and that anyone would ever be in that position of using a care kit and just talking to someone over the phone, over somebody's life. That's crazy to me. Crazy to me. Sadly, the single dose did nothing to alleviate her respiratory distress, and she passed away as expected. Unfortunately, her death was reported as suspicious that same day. And 19 months later, in February of this year, I was charged with 2 counts of murder in the state of Georgia, felony and malice, both of which carry the possibility of the death penalty. It's so hard to fathom that this is real. I cannot even begin to imagine. This is very serious. Okay, I'm so sorry. Like, I should be providing something a little more heartfelt on Christmas, but okay. Maybe there's a somewhat of a happier ending. I don't know. Luckily, I had collected ample evidence, much of which didn't seem to have been available to the medical examiner and district attorney. These included eyewitness testimonies to her passing and days leading up to it, videos and photos of her condition. I had been planning legal action for suspected malpractice, so I was already documenting everything. Proof of her prescribed morphine, phone and text records, as well as hospice records that showed she had been declared actively dying and that I was called down from New York City to be with her. I'm so happy you had all of that. With this new information, the medical examiner updated her cause of passing and it was no longer ruled a homicide. The DA then dropped all charges in August, and I was released from my $200,000 bond. So you were arrested in March and you were in there until August? This is so wrong. This is insane. Though I was cleared, the experience devastated me. I lost my career as a science and medical copywriter, my life savings and my husband's, my family, they cut all contact as soon as I became a suspect, and my reputation while grieving my mother's passing, and the agony of both cancer and Alzheimer's, and fighting for my own life. You're an angel for even surviving that. But now that I'm free, I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that what happened to me never happens to anyone else ever again. While on bond, I have spent months researching how this happened to me, and I realized that none of it would have happened had the hospice company kept an official record of the fact that 1, I had been given a comfort kit, 2, I was authorized to administer the medications, and 3, the medication used had been regularly recorded by hospice to confirm appropriate use. Now, before we continue with the story, I'm gonna hop on hydration station, and I think you should too. I also need to take a breath because this is a wild story, and I'm hoping that this does. Maybe there is someone else in a very similar position and this story does help them. Who knows? Cheers. Make sure you hydrate today. If you didn't know, I'm 10 years old. I feel like you can see that just by seeing a snippet of my bedroom in our Toronto condo. I received a Christmas gift from one of my friends, and it's the cutest thing I've ever seen. Never seen anything like it. Maybe it's in like Disney World or Disneyland, but Winnie the Pooh, but pink. Oh, your sweater's coming off, little guy. And in a cute little hoodie. Are you joking me? I'm 33 years old. Do you know the excitement I get from this? I have a whole basket of stuffed animals at my feet right now. I love it. I love it. Because there had been no records aside from my own documentation, the assumption seems to have been made that comfort kits are not allowed to be used by families, only by medical professionals. In fact, several attorneys I spoke to after the incident expressed shock that lay people were ever allowed or told to give morphine to dying loved ones, as many believed it was illegal. However, millions of American families are prescribed and instructed to use comfort kits with their dying loved ones every year. That is still blowing my mind since I read it earlier. When I was charged, I had no idea there were no legal protections for this use. It's why I assumed, after being accused, that everything would soon be cleared up once investigators realized this. But no one ever seemed to. I realized then that what happened to me had exposed a huge gap in our home hospice care system. While caregivers are routinely provided comfort kits, no legal protections exist to shield them from criminal allegations once their loved ones pass away. This is very different from healthcare providers who are protected from such allegations. Now I am proposing Marsha's Law in my mom's name. This law would mandate that as soon as families are prescribed a comfort kit, hospice would document and confirm that this kit is for the family to use in accordance with their training and guidelines. At this point, families would be asked to keep a record of their comfort care use, including the dosage and symptoms that prompted it. Finally, on a regular basis, hospice professionals would verify this use so that there is clear record of documented and authorized use. Such a law would have prevented what happened to me. But until the law I want becomes a reality, I want to post the following advice for everyone here, because if this happened to me, it will happen again to somebody else. Number 1, once your loved one goes into hospice and you receive your comfort kit, ask your hospice nurse or provider if you can make a video recording of their instructions for its use, and try to record them giving you the permission to record. This is important depending on state laws. Not only will this help confirm that you are indeed the authorized person to give these medications, but will also help remind you of the exact instructions if and when your loved one begins to experience distress. Number 2, keep your own document recording comfort medication use, including the amount and symptoms that prompted it. Even better if you can get the hospice provider to sign and verify. This way, if someone accuses you of abuse down the line, you have some documentation of appropriate use that is witnessed by a medical professional. And number 3, finally, and this is the hardest and worst part, if your loved one is in profound distress and nearing death, recording their condition and symptoms via video may prove critical in giving investigators and medical examiners needed context for their passing. My videos very likely played an important role in my case, as some people at the facility she was at had falsely alleged online that my mom was singing and dancing just before she passed away. Videos, photos, and hospice's own records of her condition proved otherwise. These videos and photos, since they are so triggering, are hidden in a private folder on my husband's phone so that I never have to see them. Horrific. That's a nightmare. Edit. I had no idea my story made it big until I started getting messages from media outlets and wonderfully helpful people with connections to state legislators. I'm overwhelmed by the empathy, thoughtfulness, and the solidarity in rage and horror that I largely bore alone for nearly 2 years in terrifying and agonizing silence. Thank you for this, for your words, your support, for your donations. Though I'll try to respond individually, I may not get to everyone here, but I assure you that reading your words is a balm to my pain and gives me so much hope for the future of Marsha's Law, so that others who don't have the privileges that I did and do won't have to face death, life in prison, or a plea deal for providing comfort care in good faith for their passing loved one. My hope is that in near future, my story will break nationwide and I can gain some momentum to have the law passed at the federal level. Though my case going so far was exceptionally rare, I appear to be the first person in US history to have been charged for someone who was declared to be actively dying. Accusations of murder against caregivers with loved ones in hospice are shockingly common, and the barriers between an accusation and a prosecution are vanishingly thin as it stands today. Terrifying. Now we have a top comment here that was left on the post. Someone commented, "What can we do to help make this happen? A friend of mine was passing away with cancer and had some hospice care. Her sister was her caregiver and in charge of administering morphine. Since the hospice workers only came twice per week, what was she supposed to do except give it to her as prescribed to ease her pain? I can't understand why anyone who is just providing comfort care for a loved one would be charged with." I'm so sorry that you were. OP said, "I'm not sure if I'm allowed to share my GoFundMe here, but right now you can help support my campaign to take this to the federal levels by donating or just sharing the story." And then she did link her GoFundMe page, which I will also link, because if we can help this cause in any way, I think we should. I guess talking about it is helpful. It is a recent story. It's still going on. All you have to do is Google her name and the updates are very, very recent. So if she could see Marsha's Law through and we could help, why not? I guess there is a happy ending in that sense, that we can maybe help, because this is the craziest story. I feel awful for her. All right, well, not very holly and jolly, but maybe a little bit, because maybe I was meant to come across this story, maybe talking about it and sharing it to any kind of level can help in some way. Who knows? But let me know your thoughts and feelings. Maybe you've experienced something like this yourself with at-home hospice. Maybe this will help someone. Stay classy out there. Stay sassy.